Hi guys, so we're back up in the office tonight, and really this evening we really are doing something totally different that I've never done before. But I'm going to go back onto that subject of loose lead walking and the subject of why I don't believe it's a particularly good idea just to contact a trainer and say, look, come and collect my dog, teach them to walk nicely please, and then hand them back to me. And for you to be no part of that equation, you're just not involved at all. And there's a couple of reasons for that, and I'm going to hopefully try and lead into them without waffling on too much. But I really just want to explain your dog pulling on the lead. I just want to reiterate really what I've said before in previous videos, is generally speaking, or it could certainly possibly be a learnt behaviour. Okay, there could be both classical conditioning involved in that the dog has learnt that that's how he performs while wearing a particular piece of equipment, and we may well need to change equipment. And it may well be that the dog has learnt through what we call operant conditioning, or the consequences of their behaviour, that those have been rewarded. Okay, and so they keep persisting. But there's also something else that's going on. And generally speaking, what I find is that dogs pulling on the lead can just be a symptom of a much, much bigger problem. Now, certainly I will say that if you are involved in teaching your dog to walk nicely, and you are actually part of that equation, then going through that and learning how to communicate, effectively with your dog about what you do want and don't want, and various different bits, you may well be able to then help with this much bigger problem. But most people aren't even aware that they've got the problem. And what I've done is on the whiteboard behind me here, or on the flip chart rather, tonight what I've done, I've just written the subject of pulling on the lead. Okay, I hope you can read that. And that's why a lot of people will contact me, or they will contact these trainers just to turn up and deal with that one particular problem. But on this list, as you can see, I've got most of it covered. Okay, and the reason for that is this list is compiled of other things that I spot, generally speaking, when I first turn up at the client's home, or become apparent to me while I'm there. Now, don't get me wrong, most of my clients have possibly mentioned or have mentioned some of these issues before. But if you're just hiring a trainer to stop your dog from pulling and to walk nicely, the chances are these things haven't been discussed, and therefore, they've not been taken into account. So let me just show you. Pulling on the lead is what most people think the problem is. But now let me show you, okay, some of the other things that I find when I turn up on the home. So I'm just going to reveal those to you now. And these are made by me generally in my notes after I've, visited and worked with the client. So I'm just going to remove this, guys. And what you're going to find is, I'm going to try and reveal this as we go through. So what I normally find is, when I turn up at a client's home to work with them on this, or what that trainer may well find when he turns up, and you've only paid him to work on this, that your dog actually rushes at or through doorways. Okay, so there's another problem. We also find, generally speaking, on us stepping through that doorway, that your dog is not polite to your guests. It actually jumps on and mouths your guests. Okay? This is something that I spot, or I come across very, very frequently myself. The next thing we find is that your dog ignores your instructions, either to go to its bed, place, or wherever, or just to simply stop jumping and mouthing at your guests, or me, or the other trainer. Okay? They then go on to constantly demand attention. Okay? So what we've turned up to work on this, or that particular trainer has turned up to work on this, and then we find these things going on as we enter the home. We also find with a lot of dogs that they nuisance bark. Okay? Now, whether this is associated with this or not, or with something else that we might cover in a minute? We don't know at this stage, but we get a lot of nuisance barking. Quite often, when I go down and put my bag down, I find the dog is only too willing to steal or stick its nose in my bag. And generally speaking, then when we have a bit of a conversation with the owner, we also find that the dog counter surfs as well. Okay, so we've turned up, or that trainer has turned up to deal with pulling on the lead, but all these other things are becoming apparent while we're there. Quite often when I'm in the client's home, I also find that the dog causes damage. I look around the home and I can see damage that the dog has caused. It's got the remotes, it's chewed the skirting board, it's done this, that and the other. Okay, and that again opens up another conversation. What we quite often find, last but not least on this list, and this list is not exhaustive, but this is some of the most common things, that the dog is constantly overreacting to things or stimulus in their environment. Okay, either when they're in the home or when they're out pulling on the lead. All right? So we can see that the problem is not just pulling on the lead. Now, I'm going to step back in front of the camera now because I want to address you directly. All these things on this list are symptoms of that much, much larger problem. And I'm going to tell you a secret. I'm going to let you know what that larger problem is. And that larger problem is a lack of impulse control, a lack of self-control on behalf of your dog. Okay? And all these are just symptoms. All of them. Now, more importantly, we've highlighted there's more going on than your dog just pulling you on the lead. If you're not part of that equation of overcoming this, which may or may not be alert behaviour, and generally is, but then so are all these. All these are also, or could be, potentially learnt behaviours, as well as that lack of impulse control. It was the lack of impulse control that caused the behaviours in the first place, and then they've gone on to be reinforced over and over and over again, and you've not effectively told your dog that none of these behaviours are acceptable. You've not addressed that bigger problem of over-arousal and total lack of impulse control in your dog. Now I've got a question for you. If you've paid me or any other trainer just to come and work on that, and you've booked that allotted time, what are you going to do about these? When are those going to be addressed? That's why I won't just come out and work on this. Because I know we've got generally a much, much bigger problem. And what I want to do, I want you to be part of that equation. I want you to be invested in the development of your dog. How to train it, how to stop those unwanted behaviours. Yeah? How to instill that impulse control in your dog. And because I'm aware of that, that's what makes me reluctant to just come and do this. Because I'm not even doing half a job. But more importantly, if you get a trainer just to turn up, collect your dog, take it off for half a day, a couple of days, a 3-week board and train to teach it this, and you're not part of that equation, pretty much you've wasted your money. Because the moment the dog gets dropped off, it's still probably going to perform all these other behaviours. Okay? So quite a long one. I hope I haven't waffled too much, but I'm going to go now and feed my dogs. Bye.